Hello, welcome back to Boring Fantasy for Sleep. Tonight is episode 9 of The King of Elfland's Daughter by Lord Dunsany, the last episode. In episode 8, the horn sounded across the marshes. Orion raised the ancient horn above the dark water and sounded it, and the sound crossed the border and was heard in Elfland and reached the places that nothing else could reach. And Alveric drew closer. The grey of the unenchanted plain gave way round him, the air changing, the light deepening, the border closer than it had been since the beginning of his quest. The unicorn turned and faced Orion across a forest clearing. After all the miles, after all the hours in the dark, two beings from different worlds, standing in the same dark, looking at each other across the distance that remained. And Lirazel, in Elfland, looked west and saw the fields we know, not remembered them, saw them, the actual smoke of the actual chimneys of Earl, rising in the actual grey morning air, just across the border, just on the other side of the Rune her father wrote. Everything has been converging on the border from both sides for 9 episodes, for years of wandering and longing and grief. Tonight, the elf king makes his final decision. He loves his daughter. He has always loved his daughter. Everything he has done out of love for his daughter. And love, in Dunsany's world, does not always give what it intends to give. But sometimes, in the end, after everything, it gives something larger than what was asked for. Something is going to happen tonight that cannot be undone. I want to tell you one thing before we begin. Dunsany will not end this the way you expect. He never does. The ending of this novel is genuinely strange and genuinely beautiful. And it will not give anyone everything they wanted. Not Alveric, not Lirazel, not the Parliament of Earl, not you. What it gives instead is something that only Dunsany could give. A world rearranging itself around something irreversible, quietly, without drama, in prose so beautiful that the loss and the wonder arrive together and are indistinguishable from each other. This is the last episode. This is episode 9, The Last Rune, chapters 30, 31, 32, 33, and 34.
Chapter 30. The coming of too much magic. In Earl that had sighed for magic, there was indeed magic now. The pigeon loft and old lumber lofts over stables were all full of trolls. The ways were full of their antics, and lights bobbed up and down the street at night, long after traffic was home. For the will-o'-the-wisps would go dancing along the gutters, and had made their homes round the soft edges of duck ponds, and in green-black patches of moss that grew upon oldest thatch. And nothing seemed the same in the old village. And amongst all these magical folk, the magical half of Orion's blood, that had slept while he went amongst earthly men, hearing mundane talk each day, stirred out of its sleep and awakened long-sleeping thoughts in his brain. And the elfin horns that he often heard blowing at evening blew with a meaning now, and blew stronger as though they were nearer. The folk of the village, watching their lord by day, saw his eyes turned away towards Elfland, saw him neglecting the wholesome earthly cares. And at night there came the queer lights and the gibbering of the trolls. A fear settled on Earl. At this time, the Parliament took counsel again. 12 greybeard quaking men that had come to the house of Narl when their work was ended at evening. And all the evening was weird with the new magic of Elfland. Every man of them, as he ran from his own warm house on his way to the forge of Narl, had seen lights leaping, or heard voices gibbering, which were of no Christum land. And some had seen shapes prowling, which were of no earthly growing. And they feared that all manner of things had slipped through the border of Elfland to come and visit the trolls. They spoke low in their parliament, all told the same tale, a tale of children terrified, a tale of women demanding the old ways again. And as they spoke, they eyed window and crevice, none knowing what might come. And Oth said, "Let us folk go to the Lord Orion, as we went to his grandfather in his long red room. Let us say how we sought for magic, and lo, we have magic enough. And let him follow no more after witchery, nor the things that are hidden from man." He listened acutely, standing there amongst his hushed comrade neighbours. Was it goblin voices that mocked him? Or was it only echo? Who could say? And almost at once, the night all round was hushed again, and Threll said, "Nay, it is too late for that." Threll had seen their lord one evening, standing alone on the downs, all motionless and listening to something sounding from Elfland, with his eyes to the east as he listened. And nothing was sounding. Not a noise was astir. Yet Orion stood there called by things beyond mortal hearing. "It is too late now," said Threll, and that was the fear of all. Then Guhitch rose slowly up and stood by that table, and trolls were gibbering like bats away in their loft, and the pale marsh lights were flickering, and shapes prowled in the dark. The pit-pat of their feet came now and then to the ears of the 12 that were there in that inner room. And Guhitch said, "We wished for a little magic." And a gust of gibbering came clear from the trolls, and then they disputed a while as to how much magic they had wished in the olden time, when the grandfather of Orion was lord in Earl. But when they came to a plan, this was the plan of Guhitch. "If we may not turn our lord Orion," he said, "and his eyes be turned to Elfland, let all our parliament go up the hill to the witch Zirundaril, and put our case to her, and ask for a spell which shall be put against too much magic." And at the name of Zirundaril, the 12 took heart again, for they knew that her magic was greater than the magic of flickering lights, and knew there was not a troll or thing of the night, but went in fear of her broom. They took heart again, and quaffed Narl's heavy mead, and refilled their mugs and praised Guhitch, and late in the night they all rose up together to go back to their homes, and all kept close together as they went, and sang grave old songs to affright the things that they feared, though little the light trolls care, or the will-o'-the-wisps, for the things that are grave to man. And when only one was left, he ran to his house, and the will-o'-the-wisps chased him. When the next day came, they ended their work early, for the Parliament of Earl cared not to be left on the Witches' Hill when night came, or even the gloaming. They met outside Narl's forge in the early afternoon, 11 of the Parliament, and they called out Narl. And all were wearing the clothes they were wont to wear when they went with the rest to the holy place of the Freer, though there was scarcely a soul he had ever cursed that was not blessed by her. And away they went with their old stout staves up the hill. And as soon as they could, they came to the witch's house, and there they found her sitting outside her door, gazing over the valley away, and looking neither older nor younger, nor concerned one way or the other with the coming and going of years. "We be the Parliament of Earl," they said, standing before her, all in their graver clothes. "Aye," she said, "you desired magic. Has it come to you yet?" "Truly," they said, "and to spare." "There is more to come," she said. "Mother Witch," said Null, "we are met here to pray you that you will give us a goodly spell, which shall be a charm against magic, so that there be no more of it in the valley, for overmuch has come." "Overmuch," she said, "overmuch magic." As though magic were not the spice and essence of life, its ornament and its splendor. "By my broom," said she, "I give you no spell against magic." And they thought of the wandering lights and the scarce-seen gibbering things, and all the strangeness and evil that was come to their valley of Earl. And they besought her again, speaking suavely to her. "O Mother Witch," said Guhic, "there is overmuch magic indeed, and the folk that should tarry in Elfland are all over the border." "It is even so," said Null. "The border is broken, and there will be no end to it. Will-o'-the-wisps should stay in the marshes, and trolls and goblins in Elfland, and we folk should keep to our own folk. This is the thought of us all. For magic, if we desired it somewhat years ago when we were young, pertains to matters that are not for man." She eyed him silently, with a cat-like glow increasing in her eyes. And when she neither spoke nor moved, Null besought her again. "O Mother Witch," he said, "will you give us no spell to guard our homes against magic?" "No spell indeed," she hissed. "No spell indeed. By broom and stars and night riding. Would you rob Earth of her heirloom that has come from the olden time? Would you take her treasure and leave her bare to the scorn of her comrade planets? Poor indeed were we without magic, whereof we are well stored to the envy of darkness and space." She leaned forward from where she sat and stamped her stick, looking up in Null's face with her fierce, unwavering eyes. "I would sooner," she said, "give you a spell against water, that all the world should thirst, than give you a spell against the song of streams that evening hears faintly over the ridge of a hill, too dim for wakeful ears, a song threading through dreams, whereby we learn of old wars and lost loves of the spirits of rivers. I would sooner give you a spell against bread, that all the world should starve, than give you a spell against the magic of wheat that haunts the golden hollows in moonlight in July, through which in the warm, short nights wander how many of whom man knows nothing. I would make you spells against comfort and clothing, food, shelter, and warmth. Aye, and will do it, sooner than tear from these poor fields of earth that magic that is to them an ample cloak against the chill of space, and a gay raiment against the sneers of nothingness. Go hence, to your village go, and you that sought for magic in your youth, but desire it not in your age, know that there is a blindness of spirit which comes from age, more black than the blindness of eye, making a darkness about you across which nothing may be seen, or felt, or known, or in any way apprehended, and no voice out of that darkness shall conjure me to grant a spell against magic. Hence." And as she said, "Hence," she put her weight on her stick and was evidently preparing to rise from her seat. And at this great terror came upon all the Parliament, and they noticed at the same moment that evening was drawing in, and all the valley darkening. On this high field, where the witches' cabbages grew some light, yet lingered, and listening to her fierce words, they had not thought of the hour. But now it was manifestly growing late, and a wind roamed past them that seemed to come over the ridges a little way off, from night, and chilled them as it passed, and all the air seemed given over to that very thing against which they sought for a spell. And here they were at this hour with the witch before them, and she was evidently about to rise. Her eyes were fixed on them. Already she was partly up from her chair. There could be no doubt that before 3 moments were past, she would be hobbling amongst them with her glittering eyes peering in each one's face. They turned and ran down the hill. Chapter 31. The Cursing of Elfin Things. As the Parliament of Earl ran down the hill, they ran into the dusk of evening. Greyly it lay in the valley above the mist from the stream, but with more than the mystery of dusk, the air was heavy. Lights blinking early from houses showed that all the folk were home, and the street was deserted by everything that was human. Save when with hushed air and almost furtive step, they saw their Lord Orion like a tall shadow go by, with will-o'-the-wisps behind him, towards the house of the trolls, thinking no earthly thoughts. And the strangeness that had been growing day by day made all the village eerie, so that with short and troubled breath, the 12 old men hurried on. And so they came to the holy place of the Freer, which lay on the side of the village that was towards the Witch's Hill. And it was the hour at which he was wont to celebrate after birdsong, as they named the singing that they sang in the holy place when all the birds were home. But the Freer was not within his holy place. He stood in the cold night air on the upper step without it, his face turned towards Elfland. He had on his sacred robe, with its border of purple, and the emblem of gold round his neck. But the door of his holy place was shut, and his back was towards it. They wondered to see him stand thus, and as they wondered, the Freer began to intone, clear in the evening with his eyes away to the east, where already a few of the earliest stars were showing. With his head held high, he spoke as though his voice might pass over the frontier of twilight and be heard by the people of Elfland. "Cursed be all wandering things," he said, "whose place is not upon earth. Cursed be all lights that dwell in fens and in marish places. Their homes are in deeps of the marshes. Let them by no means stir from there until the last day. Let them abide in their place, and there await damnation. Cursed be gnomes, trolls, elves and goblins on land, and all sprites of the water. And fauns be accursed, and such as follow Pan, and all that dwell on the heath, being other than beasts or men. Cursed be fairies, and all tales told of them, and whatever enchants the meadows before the sun is up, and all fables of doubtful authority, and the legends that men hand down from unhallowed times. Cursed be brooms that leave their place by the hearth. Cursed be witches, and all manner of witcheries. Cursed be toadstool rings and whatever dances within them, and all strange lights, strange songs, strange shadows or rumours that hint of them, and all doubtful things of the dusk, and the things that ill-instructed children fear, and old wives' tales, and things done a midsummer night. All these be accursed with all that leaneth toward Elfland, and all that cometh thence. Never a lane of that village, never a barn, but a will-o'-the-wisp was dancing nimbly above it. The night was gilded with them, but as the good Freer spoke, they backed away from his curses, floating further off, as though a light wind blew them, and danced again after drifting a little way. This they did both before and behind him, and upon either hand, as he stood there upon the steps of his holy place, so that there was a circle of darkness all round him, and beyond that circle shone the lights of the marshes and Elfland. And within the dark circle in which the Freer stood, making his curses were no unhallowed things, nor were there strangenesses such as come of night, nor whispers from unknown voices, nor sounds of any music blowing here from no haunts of men, but all was orderly and seemly there, and no mysteries troubled the quiet, except such as have been justly allowed to man. And beyond that circle, whence so much was beaten back by the bright vehemence of the good man's curses, the will-o'-the-wisps rioted, and many a strangeness that poured in that night from Elfland, and goblins held high holiday. For word was gone forth in Elfland that pleasant folk had now their dwelling in Earl, and many a thing of fable, many a monster of myth had crept through that border of twilight and had come into Earl to see. And the light and false but friendly will-o'-the-wisps danced in the haunted air and made them welcome. And not only the trolls and the will-o'-the-wisps had lured these folk from their fabled land through the seldom traversed border, but the longings and thoughts of Orion, which by half his lineage were akin to the things of myth and of one race with the monsters of Elfland, were calling to them now. Ever since that day by the frontier, when he had hovered between Earth and Elfland, he had yearned more and more for his mother. And now, whether he willed it or no, his elfin thoughts were calling their kin that dwelt in the elvish fells. And at that hour, when the sound of the horns blew through the frontier of twilight they had come tumbling after it. For elfin thoughts are as much akin to the creatures that dwell in Elfland as goblins are to trolls. Within the calm and the dark of the good man's curses, the 12 old men stood silent, listening to every word. And the words seemed good to them, and soothing, and right, for they were over-weary of magic. But beyond the circle of darkness, amidst the glare of the will-o'-the-wisps with which all the night flickered, amidst goblin laughter and the unbridled mirth of the trolls, where old legends seemed alive and the fearfulest fables true, amongst all manner of mysteries, queer sounds, queer shapes, and queer shadows, Orion passed with his hounds, eastwards towards Elfland. Chapter 32. Lirazel yearns for Earth. In the hall that was built of moonlight, dreams, music, and mirage, Lirazel knelt on the sparkling floor before her father's throne, and the light of the magical throne shone blue in her eyes, and her eyes flashed back a light that deepened its magic. And kneeling there, she besought a rune of her father. Old days would not let her be. Sweet memories thronged about her. The lawns of Elfland had her love, lawns upon which she had played by the old miraculous flowers before any histories were written here. She loved the sweet, soft creatures of myth that moved like magical shadows out of the guardian wood and over enchanted grasses. She loved every fable and song and spell that had made her elfin home. And yet the bells of earth, that could not pass the frontier of silence and twilight, beat note by note in her brain. And her heart felt the growth of the little earthly flowers as they bloomed or faded or slept in seasons that came not to Elfland. And in those seasons, wasting away as everyone went by, she knew that Alveric wandered, knew that Orion lived and grew and changed, and that both, if Earth's legend were true, would soon be lost to her forever and ever, when the gates of heaven would shut on both with a golden thud. For between Elfland and heaven is no path, no flight, no way, and neither sends ambassador to the other. She yearned to the bells of earth and the English cowslips, but would not forsake again her mighty father, nor the world that his mind had made. And Alveric came not, nor her boy Orion. Only the sound of Alveric's horn came once, and often strange longings seemed to float in air, beating vainly back and forth between Orion and her. And the gleaming pillars that held the dome of the roof, or above which it floated, quivered a little with her grief, and shadows of her sorrow flickered and faded in the crystal deep of the walls, for a moment dimming many a colour that is unknown in our fields, but making them no less lovely. What could she do who would not cast away magic and leave the home that an ageless day had endeared to her, while centuries were withering like leaves upon earthly shores, whose heart was yet held by those little tendrils of earth, which are strong enough, and some, translating her bitter need into pitiless earthly words, may say that she wished to be in two places at once. And that was true, and the impossible wish lies on the verge of laughter, and for her was only and wholly a matter for tears. Impossible? Was it impossible? We have to do with magic. She besought a rune of her father, kneeling upon the magic floor in the midmost centre of Elfland, and around her arose the pillars, of which only song may say, whose misty bulk was disturbed and troubled by Lirazel's sorrow. She besought a rune that wherever they roamed through, whatever fields of earth, should restore to her Alveric and Orion, bringing them over the border and into the elfin lands to live in that timeless age that is one long day in Elfland. And with them she prayed might come, for the mighty runes of her father had such power even as this, some garden of earth, or bank where violets lay, or hollow where cowslips waved, to shine in Elfland forever, like no music heard in any cities of men or dreamed upon earthly hills. With his elfin voice her father answered her, and the ringing words were such as had power to change the shape of the hills of dreams, or to enchant new flowers to blow in fields of fairy. I have no rune, he said, that has power to pass the frontier, or to lure anything from the mundane fields, be it violets, cowslips, or men, to come through our bulwark of twilight that I have set to guard us against material things. No rune but one, and that the last of the potencies of our realm. And kneeling yet upon the glittering floor, of whose profound translucent song alone shall speak, she prayed him for that one rune, last potency, though it be of the awful wonders of Elfland, and he would not squander that rune that lay locked in his treasury, most magical of his powers, and last of the three, but held it against the peril of a distant and unknown day, whose light shone just beyond a curve of the ages, too far for the eerie vision even of his foreknowledge. She knew that he had moved Elfland far afield, and swung it back, as tides are swung by the moon, till it lapped at the very edge of the fields of men once more, with its glimmering border touching the tips of the earthly hedges. And she knew that no more than the moon had he used a rare wonder, merely wafting his regions away by a magical gesture. Might he not, she thought, bring Elfland and earth yet nearer, using no rarer magic than is used by the moon at the neap? And so she supplicated him once again, recalling wonders to him that he had wrought, and yet used no rarer spell than a certain wave of his arm. She spoke of the magical orchids that came down once over cliffs, like a sudden roseate foam breaking over the elfin mountains. She spoke of the downy clusters of queer mauve flowers which bloomed in the grass of the dells, and of that glory of blossom that forever guarded the lawns. For all these wonders were his. Birdsong and blooming of flower alike were his inspirations. If such wonders as song and bloom were wrought by a wave of his hand, surely he might by beckoning bring but a short way from earth some few fields that lay so near to the earthly border. Or surely he might move Elfland a little earthward again, who had lately moved it as far as the turn in the path of the comet, and had brought it again to the edge of the fields of men. Never, he said, can any rune but one, or spell or wonder, or any magical thing, move our realm one wing's width over the earthly border, or bring anything thence here. And little they know in those fields that even one rune can do it. And still she would scarce believe that those accustomed powers of her wizard sire could not easily bring the things of earth and the wonders of Elfland together. From those fields, he said, my spells are all beaten back, my incantations are mute, and my right arm powerless. And when he spoke thus to her of that dread right arm, at last perforce she believed him, and she prayed him again for that ultimate rune, that long-hoarded treasure of Elfland, that potency that had strength to work against the harsh weight of earth. And his thoughts went into the future all alone, peering far down the years. More gladly had a traveller at night in lonely ways given up his lantern than had this elvish king now used his last great spell, and so cast it away, and gone without it into those dubious years, whose dim forms he saw and many of their events, but not to the end. Easily had she asked for that dread spell, which should appease the only need she had. Easily might he have granted it were he but human, but his vast wisdom saw so much of the years to be, that he feared to face them without this last great potency. Beyond our border, he said, material things stand fierce and strong and many, and have the power to darken and to increase, for they have wonders too. And when this last potency be used and gone, there remains in all our realm no rune that they dread, and material things will multiply and put the powers in bondage, and we, without any rune, of which they go in awe, shall become no more than a fable. We must yet store this rune. Thus he reasoned with her rather than commanded, though he was the founder and king of all those lands, and all that wandered in them, and of the light in which they shone. And reason in Elfland was no daily thing, but an exotic wonder. With this he sought to soothe her earthward fancies, and Lirazel made no answer, but only wept, weeping tears of enchanted dew. And all the line of the elfin mountains quivered, as wandering winds will tremble to notes of a violin that have strayed beyond hearing down the ways of the air. And all the creatures of fable that dwelt in the realm of Elfland felt something strange in their hearts, like the dying away of a song. Is it not best for Elfland that I do this? Said the king. And still she only wept, and then he sighed and considered the welfare of Elfland again. For Elfland drew its happiness from the calm of that palace, which was its centre, and of which only song may tell. And now its spires were troubled, and the light of its walls was dim, and a sorrow was floating from its vaulted doorway, all over the fields of faerie, and over the dells of dream. If she were happy, Elfland might bask again in that untroubled light and eternal calm, whose radiance blesses all but material things. And though his treasury were open and empty, yet what more were needed then? So he commanded, and a coffer was brought before him by elfin things. And the knight of his guard, who had watched over it forever, came marching behind them. He opened the coffer with a spell, for it opened to no key, and taking from it an ancient parchment scroll, he rose and read from it while his daughter wept. And the words of the rune, as he read, were like the notes of a band of violins, all played by masters, chosen from many ages, hidden on midsummer's midnight, in a wood, with a strange moon shining, the air all full of madness and mystery, and lurking close but invisible, things beyond the wisdom of man. Thus he read that rune, and powers heard and obeyed it, not alone in Elfland, but over the border of earth. Chapter 33. The Shining Line. Alveric wandered on, alone of that small company of three, without a hope to guide him. For Niv and Zend, who were lately led by the hope of their fantastic quest, no longer yearned for Elfland, but were guided now by their plan to hold Alveric back from it. They vacillated more slowly than sane folk, but clung with far more than sane fervour to each vacillation. And Zend, that had wandered through so many years with the hope of Elfland before him, looked on it, now that he had seen its frontier, as one of the rivals of the moon. Niv, who had endured as much for Alveric's quest, saw in that magical land something more fabulous than was in all his dreams. And now, when Alveric attempted lame cajoleries with those swift and ferocious minds, he received no more answers from Zend than the curt statement, "It is not the will of the moon," while Niv would only reiterate, "Have I not dreams enough?" They were wandering back again past farms that had known them years before. With their old grey tent more tattered, they appeared in the twilight, adding a shade to the evening, in fields wherein they and their tent had become a legend. And never was Alveric unwatched by some mad eye, lest he should slip from the camp and come to Elfland, and be where dreams were stranger than Niv's, and under a power more magical than the moon. Often he tried, creeping silently from his place in the dead of night. One moonlight night, he tried first, waiting awake till all the world seemed sleeping. He knew that the frontier was not far away, as he crept from the tent into the brightness and black shadows, and past Niv, sleeping heavily. A little way he went, and there was Zend, sitting still on a rock, gazing into the face of the moon. Round came Zend's face, and newly inspired by the moon, he shouted and leapt at Alveric. They had taken away his sword, and Niv woke and came towards them with immense fury, united to Zend by one jealousy, for each of them knew well that the wonders of Elfland were greater than any fancy that their minds would ever know. And again he tried, on a night when no moon shone. But on that night Niv was sitting outside the camp, relishing in a strange and joyless way a certain comradeship that there was between his ravings and the interstellar darkness. And there in the night, he saw Alveric slipping away towards the land whose wonders far transcended all Niv's poor dreams, and all the fury the lesser can feel for the greater awoke at once in his mind. And creeping up behind him, without any help from Zend, he smote Alveric insensible to the ground. And never did Alveric plan any escape after that, but that the busy thoughts of madness anticipated it. And so they came, watchers and watched, over the fields of men. And Alveric sought help of the folk of the farms. But the cunning of Niv knew too well the tricks of sanity, so that when the folk came running over their fields to that queer grey tent from which they heard Alveric's cries, they found Niv and Zend posed in a calm that they had much practiced, while Alveric told of his thwarted quest of Elfland. Now by many men, all quests are considered mad, as the cunning of Niv knew. Alveric found no help here. As they went back by the way by which they had marched for years, Niv led that band of three, stepping ahead of Alveric and Zend, with his lean face held high, made all the leaner by the long, thin points to which he had trained his beard and his moustaches, and wearing Alveric's sword that stuck out long behind him, and its hilt high in front. And he stepped and perked his head with a certain air that revealed to the rare travellers who saw him that this sparse and ragged figure esteemed itself the leader of a greater band than were visible. Indeed, if one had just seen him at the end of the evening with the dusk and the mist of the fenlands close behind him, he might have believed that in the dusk and the mist was an army that followed this gay, worn, confident man. Had the army been there, Niv was sane. Had the world accepted that an army was there, even though only Alveric and Zend followed his curious step, still he was sane. But the lonely fancy that had not fact to feed on, nor the fancy of any other for fellowship, was for its loneliness mad. Zend watched Alveric all the while as they marched behind Niv, for their mutual jealousy of the wonders of Elfland bound Niv and Zend together to work as with one wild whim. And now, one morning, Niv stretched himself up to the fullest possible height of his lean inches and extended his right arm high and addressed his army. "We are come near again to Earl," he said, "and we shall bring new fancies in place of outworn things and things that are stale, and its customs shall be henceforth the way of the moon." Now Niv cared nothing for the moon, but he had great cunning, and he knew that Zend would aid his new plan against Earl, if only for the sake of the moon. And Zend cheered till the echoes came back from a lonely hill. And Niv smiled to them like a leader, confident of his hosts. And Alveric rose against them then, and struggled with Niv and Zend for the last time, and learned that age or wandering or loss of hope had left him unable to strive against the maniacal strength of these two. And after that, he went with them more meekly, with resignation, caring no longer what befell him, living only in memory and only for days that had been. And in November evenings in this dim camp in the chill he saw, looking only backwards through the years, spring mornings shine again on the towers of Earl. In the light of these mornings, he saw Orion again, playing again with old toys that the witch had made with a spell. He saw Lirazel move once more through the gracious gardens, yet no light that memory is able to kindle was strong enough to illumine much that camp in those somber evenings, when the damp rose up from the ground and the chill swooped out of the air, and Niv and Zend, as darkness came stealing nearer, began to chatter in low, eager voices, schemes inspired by such whims as throve at dusk in the waste. Only when the sad day drifted wholly thence, and Alveric slept by flapping tatters that streamed from the tent in the night, then only was memory, unhindered by the busy changes of day, able to bring back Earl to him, bright, happy, and vernal, so that while his body lay still, in far fields, in the dark and the winter, all that was most active and live in him was back over the wolds in Earl, back over the years in spring with Lirazel and Orion. How far he was bodily, in sheer miles from his home, for which his happy thoughts each night forsook his weary frame, Alveric knew not. It was many years since their tent had stood one evening, a grey shape in that landscape, in which it now waved its tatters. But Niv knew that of late they had come nearer to Earl, for his dreams of it came to him now soon after he fell asleep, and they used to come to him further on in the night, on the other side of midnight, and even towards morning. And from this he argued that they used to have further to come, and were now but a little way off. When he told this secretly one evening to Zend, Zend listened gravely, but gave no opinion, merely saying the moon knows. Nevertheless, he followed Niv, who led this curious caravan always in that direction from which his dreams of the Valley of Earl came soonest. And this queer leadership brought them nearer to Earl, as often happens where men follow leaders that are crazy or blind or deceived. They reach some port or other, though they stray down the years with little foresight enough. Were it otherwise, what would become of us? And one day, the upper parts of the towers of Earl looked at them out of blue distance, shining in early sunlight above a curve of the downs. And towards them, Niv turned at once and led directly, for the line of their wandering march had not pointed straight to Earl, and marched on as a conqueror that sees some new city's gates. What his plans were, Alveric did not know, but kept to his apathy. And Zend did not know, for Niv had merely said that his plans must be secret. Nor did Niv know, for his fancies poured through his brain and rushed away. What fancies made what plans in a mood that was yesterday's? How could he tell today? Then, as they went, they soon came to a shepherd, standing amongst his grazing sheep and leaning upon his crook, who watched and seemed to have no other care, but only to watch all things going by, or, when nothing passed, to gaze and gaze at the downs till all his memories were fashioned out of their huge grass curves. He stood, a bearded man, and watched them with never a word as they passed. And one of Niv's mad memories suddenly knew him, and Niv hailed him by his name, and the shepherd answered. And who should he be but Vand? Then they fell talking, and Niv spoke suavely, as he always did with sane folk, aping with clever mimicry the ways and the tricks of sanity, lest Alveric should ask for help against him. But Alveric sought no help. Silent, he stood and heard the others talking, but his thoughts were far in the past, and their voices were only sounds to him. And Vand inquired of them if they had found Elfland, but he spoke, as one asks of children if their toy boat has been to the Happy Isles. He had had for many years to do with sheep, and had come to know their needs and their price, and the need men have of them. And these things had risen imperceptibly up all round his imagination, and were at last a wall over which he saw no further. When he was young, yes, once, he had sought for Elfland, but now, why now he was older. Such things were for the young. But we saw its border, said Zend, the border of twilight. A mist, said Vand, of the evening. I have stood, said Zend, upon the edge of Elfland. But Vand smiled and shook his bearded head as he leaned on his long crook, and every wave of his beard as he shook it slowly denied Zend's tales of that border, and his lips smiled it away, and his tolerant eyes were grave with the law of the fields we know. No, not Elfland, he said. And Niv agreed with Van, for he watched his mood, studying the ways of sanity. And they spoke of Elfland lightly, as one tells of some dream that came at dawn and went away before waking. And Alveric heard with despair, for Lirazel dwelt not only over the border, but even, as he saw now, beyond human belief, so that all at once she seemed remoter than ever, and he still lonelier. I sought for it once, said Vand, but no, there's no Elfland. No, said Niv, and only Zend wondered. No, replied Vand, and shook his head and lifted his eyes to his sheep. And just beyond his sheep, and coming towards them, he saw a shining line. So long his eyes stayed fixed on that shining line, coming over the downs from the eastward, that the others turned and looked. They saw it too, a shimmering line of silver, or a little blue like steel, flickering and changing with the reflection of strange passing colours. And before it, very faint like threatening breezes breathing before a storm, came the soft sound of very old songs. It caught, as they all stood gazing, one of Van's furthest sheep, and instantly its fleece was that pure gold that is told of in old romance. And the shining line came on, and the sheep disappeared altogether. They saw now that it was about the height of the mist from a small stream, and still Van stood gazing at it, neither moving nor thinking. But Niv turned very soon, and beckoned curtly to Zend, and seized Alveric by the arm, and hastened away towards Earl. The gleaming line, that seemed to bump and stumble over every unevenness of the rough fields, came not so fast as they hastened. Yet it never stopped when they rested, never wearied when they were tired, but came on over all the hills and hedges of earth. Nor did sunset change its appearance or check its pace. Chapter 34. The Last Great Rune. As Alveric hastened back, led by two madmen, to those lands over which he had long ago been lord, the horns of Elfland had sounded in Earl all day, and though only Orion heard them, they no less thrilled the air, flooding it deep with their curious golden music, and filling the day with a wonder that others felt, so that many a young girl leaned from her window to see what was enchanting the morning. But as the day wore on, the enchantment of the unheard music dwindled, giving place to a feeling that weighed on all minds in Earl, and seemed to bode the imminence of some unknown region of wonder. All his life, Orion had heard these horns blowing at evening, except upon days on which he had done ill. If he heard the horns at evening, he knew that it was well with him. But now they had blown in the morning, and blew all day, like a fanfare in front of a march. And Orion looked out of his window and saw nothing, and the horns rang on, proclaiming he knew not what. Far away, they called his thoughts from the things of earth that are the concern of men, far away from all that casts shadows. He spoke to no man that day, but went among his trolls and such elfin things as had followed them over the border. And all men that saw him perceived such a look in his eyes as showed his thoughts to be far in realms that they dreaded. And his thoughts were indeed far thence, once more with his mother. And hers were with him, lavishing tendernesses that the years had denied her, in their swift passage over our fields that she never had understood. And somehow, he knew she was nearer. And all that strange morning, the will-o'-the-wisps were restless, and the trolls leaped wildly all about their lofts, for the horns of Elfland tinged all the air with magic, and excited their blood, although they could not hear them. But towards evening, they felt impending some great change, and all grew silent and moody, and something brought to them yearnings for their far magical home, as though a breeze had blown suddenly into their faces straight off the tarns of Elfland, and they ran up and down the street looking for something magical to ease their loneliness amongst mundane things, but found nothing resembling the spell-born lilies that grew in their glory above the elfin tarns, and the folk of the village perceived them everywhere, and longed for the wholesome earthly days again that there were before the coming of magic to Earl. And some of them hurried off to the house of the Freer and took refuge with him, amongst his holy things from all the unhallowed shapes that there were in their streets, and all the magic that tingled and loomed in the air. And he guarded them with his curses, which floated away the light and almost aimless will-o'-the-wisps, and even, at a short distance, awed the trolls, but they ran and capered only a little way off. And while the little group clustered about the Freer, seeking solace from him against whatever impended, with which the air was growing tenser and grimmer as the short day wore on, there went others to Gnarl and the busy elders of Earl to say, "See what your plans have done. See what you have brought on the village." And none of the elders made immediate answer, but said that they must take counsel one with another, for they trusted greatly in the words said in their parliament. And to this intent they gathered again at the forge of Gnarl. It was evening now, but the sun had not yet set, nor Gnarl gone from his work, but his fire was beginning to glow with a deeper colour among the shadows that had entered his forge. And the elders came in there, walking slowly with grave faces, partly because of the mystery that they needed to cover their folly from the sight of the villagers, partly because magic hung now so gross in the air that they feared the imminence of some portentous thing. They sat in their parliament in that inner room, while the sun went low, and the elfin horns, had they but known it, blew clear and triumphantly. And there they sat in silence. For what could they say? They had wished for magic, and now it had come. Trolls were in all the streets. Goblins had entered houses, and now the nights were mad with will-o'-the-wisps, and all the air was heavy with unknown magic. What could they say? And after a while, Gnarl said they must make a new plan, for they had been plain bell-fearing folk. But now there were magical things all over Earl, and more came every night from Elfland to join them. And what would become of the old ways, unless they made a plan? And Gnarl's words emboldened them all, though they felt the ominous menace of the horns that they could not hear. But the talk of a plan emboldened them, for they deemed they could plan against magic. And one by one they rose to speak of a plan. But at sunset, the talk died down, and their dread that something impended grew now to a certain knowledge. Orthan Threll knew it first, who had lived familiar with mystery in the woods. All knew that something was coming. No one knew what. And they all sat silent, wondering in the gloaming. Lirazel saw it first. He had dreamed all day of the weed-green tarns of Elfland, and growing weary of earth, had gone all lonely to the top of a tower that rose from the castle of Earl, and perched himself on a battlement, and gazed wistfully homewards. And looking out over the fields we know, he saw the shining line coming down on Earl. And from it, he heard rise faint, as it rippled over the furrows, a murmur of many old songs, for it came with all manner of memories, old music and lost voices, sweeping back again to our old fields what time had driven from earth. It was coming towards him, bright as the evening star, and flashing with sudden colours, some common on earth, and some unknown to our rainbow, so that Lirazel knew it at once for the frontier of Elfland. And all his impudence returned to him at sight of his fabulous home, and he uttered shrill gusts of laughter from his high perch that rang over the roofs below like the chatter of building birds. And the little homesick trolls in the lofts were cheered by the sound of his merriment, though they knew not from what it came. And now Orion heard the horns blowing so loud and near, and there was such triumph in their blowing, and pomp, and withal so wistful a crooning, that he knew now why they blew, knew that they proclaimed the approach of a princess of the elfin line, knew that his mother came back to him, high on her hill, Zirundarel knew this, being forewarned by magic, and looking downward at evening, she saw that starlight line of blended twilights, of old lost summer evenings, sweeping over the fields towards Earl. Almost she wondered as she saw this glittering thing flowing over the earthly pastures, although her wisdom had told her that it must come. And on the one side, she saw the fields we know, full of accustomed things. And on the other, looking down from her height, she saw behind the myriad-tinted border the deep green elfin foliage and Elfland's magical flowers, and things that delirium sees not, nor inspiration on earth, and the fabulous creatures of Elfland prancing forward, and are stepping across our fields and bringing Elfland with her, the twilight flowing from both her hands, which she stretched out a little from her, was her own lady, the Princess Lirazel, coming back to her home. And at this sight, and at all the strangeness coming across our fields, or because of old memories that came with the twilight, or bygone songs that sang in it, a strange joy came shivering upon Zirundarel. And if witches weep, she wept. And now from upper windows of the houses, the folk began to see that glittering line, which was no earthly twilight. They saw it flash at them with its starry gleam, and then flow on towards them. Slowly, it came as though it rippled with difficulty over earth's rugged bulk, though moving lately over the rightful lands of the Elf King, it had outspeeded the comet. And hardly had they wondered at its strangeness when they found themselves amongst most familiar things, for the old memories that floated before it, as a wind before the thunder, beat in a sudden gust on their hearts and their houses. And lo, they were living once more amongst things long past and lost. And as that line of no earthly light came nearer, there rustled before it a sound as of rain on leaves. Old sighs, breathed over again. Old lovers' whispers repeated. And there fell on these folk, as they all leaned hushed from their windows, a mood that looked gently, wistfully, backward through time. Such a mood as might lurk by huge dock leaves in ancient gardens when everyone is gone, that has tended their roses, or ever loved the bowers. Not yet had that line of starlight, and bygone loves lapped at the walls of Earl, or foamed on the houses. But it was so near now that already there slipped away the daily cares that held folk down to the present, and they felt the balm of past days and blessings from hands long withered. Now elders ran out to children that skipped with a rope in the street to bring them into the houses, not telling them why, for fear of frightening their daughters. And the alarm in their mothers' faces for a moment startled the children. Then some of them looked to the eastward and saw that shining line. "It is Elfland coming," they said, and went on with their skipping. And the hounds knew, though what they knew I cannot say, but some influence reached them from Elfland, such as comes from the full moon, and they bayed as they bay on clear nights when the fields are flooded with moonlight, and the dogs in the streets that always watched lest anything strange should come, knew how great a strangeness was, near them now, and proclaimed it to all the valley. Already the old leather worker, in his cottage across the fields, looking out of his window to see if his well were frozen, saw a May morning of 50 years ago, and his wife gathering lilac. For Elfland had beaten time away from his garden, and now the jackdaws had left the towers of Earl and flew away westward, and the baying of the hounds filled all the air, and the barking of lesser dogs. This suddenly ceased, and a great hush fell on the village, as though snow had suddenly fallen inches deep. And through the hush came softly a strange old music, and no one spoke at all. Then, where Zirundarel sat by her door, with her chin on her hand gazing, she saw the bright line touch the houses and stop, flowing past them on either side, but held by the houses, as though it had met with something too strong for its magic. But for only a moment the houses held back that wonderful tide, for it broke over them with a burst of unearthly foam, like a meteor of unknown metal burning in heaven, and passed on, and the houses stood all quaint and queer and enchanted, like homes remembered out of a long past age by the sudden waking of an inherited memory. And then she saw the boy she had nursed step forward into the twilight, drawn by a power no less than that which was moving Elfland. She saw him and his mother meet again in all that light that was flooding the valley with splendor. And Alveric was with her, he and she together, a little apart from attendant fabulous things that escorted her all the way from the vales of the elfin mountains. And from Alveric had fallen away that heavy burden of years, and all the sorrow of wandering. He too was back again in the days that were, with old songs and lost voices. And Zirundarel could not see the princess's tears when she met Orion again after all that separation of space and time. For though they flashed like stars, she stood in the border in all that radiance of starlight that shone about her like the broad face of a planet. But though the witch saw not this, there came to her old ears clearly the sounds of songs returning again to our fields out of the glens of Elfland, wherein they had lain so long, which were all the old songs lost from the nurseries of the earth. They crooned now about the meeting of Lirazel and Orion, and Niv and Zend had ease at last from their fierce fancies, for their wild thoughts sank to rest in the calm of Elfland, and slept as hawks sleep in their trees when evening has lulled the world. Zirundarel saw them standing together where the edge of the downs had been, a little way off from Alveric, and there was Vand amongst his golden sheep that were munching the strange sweet juices of wonderful flowers. With all these wonders, Lirazel came for her son, and brought Elfland with her, that never had moved before the width of a harebell over the earthly border. And where they met was an old garden of roses under the towers of Earl, where once she had walked, and none had cared for it since. Great weeds were now in its walks, and even they were withered with the rigour of late November. Their dry stalks hissed about his feet as Orion walked through them, and they swung back brown behind him over untended paths. But before him bloomed in all their glory and beauty the great voluptuous roses, gorgeous with summer. Between November, that she was driving before her, and that old season of roses that she brought back to her garden, Lirazel and Orion met. For a moment the withered garden lay brown behind him. Then it all flashed into bloom, and the wild, glad song of birds from 100 arbours welcomed back the old roses. And Orion was back again, in the beauty and brightness of days, whose dim fair shades his memory cherished, such as are the chief of all the treasures of man. But the treasury in which they lie is locked, and we have not the key. Then Elfland poured over Earl. Only the holy place of the Freer and the garden that was about it remained still of our earth, a little island, all surrounded by wonder, like a mountain peak, all rocky, alone in air, when a mist wells up in the gloaming from highland valleys, and leaves only one pinnacle, darkly, to gaze at the stars. For the sound of his bell beat back the Rune, and the twilight, for a little distance all round. There he lived happy, contented, not quite alone, amongst his holy things. For a few that had been cut off by that magical tide lived on the holy island and served him there. And he lived beyond the age of ordinary men, but not to the years of magic. None ever crossed the boundary, but one, the witch Zirundarel, who from her hill that was just on the earthward border would go by broom on starry nights to see her lady again, where she dwelt unvexed by years, with Alveric and Orion. Thence she comes sometimes, high in the night on her broom, unseen by any down on the earthly fields, unless you chance to notice star after star blink out for an instant as she passes by them, and sits beside cottage doors and tells queer tales to such as care to have news of the wonders of Elfland. May I hear her again. And with the last of his world-disturbing runes sent forth, and his daughter happy once more, the elfin king on his tremendous throne breathed and drew in the calm in which Elfland basks, and all his realms dreamed on in that ageless repose, of which deep green pools in summer can barely guess. All and Earl dreamed too, with all the rest of Elfland, and so passed out of all remembrance of men. For the 12 that were of the Parliament of Earl looked through the window of that inner room, wherein they planned their plans by the forge of Nile, and gazing over their familiar lands, perceived that they were no longer the fields we know. That is the end of The King of Elfland's Daughter by Lord Dunsany, published in 1924. Take a moment with that. Elfland came, not Lirazel returning to the Valley of Earl, not Alveric finding the border and crossing it, not any of the resolutions that 9 episodes of converging grief and longing seem to be building toward. Elfland came to the fields we know. The Elf King wrote the last rune, the greatest rune, the rune that cost him everything and gave his daughter everything she needed. And Elfland moved. The border did not open. The border dissolved. The golden air, the pale blue mountains, the luminous deep green, all of it came west and kept coming and reached the Valley of Earl and the village and the long stone hall and the fields where the Parliament had always met and did not stop. The fields we know are no longer only the fields we know. Whether this is loss or gift, Dunsany does not say. He has never said. He gave us the image and the prose and the 9 episodes of approach to this moment, and the meaning is ours. Alveric is in Elfland. He has been looking for it for the entire novel, and now it has come to him instead. And it is not what he was looking for, and it is everything he was looking for simultaneously. Lirazel is home. Both of her homes, at last, are the same place. Orion hunts in a world that is half of everything he always was, and the 12 old men of Earl, in their long stone hall, got what they asked for. They asked to be remembered in song. They will be. Thank you for listening. All 9 episodes, all 35 chapters. Lord Dunsany wrote something extraordinary in 1924, and almost no one has read it since. You have heard it now. It belongs to you in the way that only things heard in the dark, at the end of the day, in the last hour before sleep, can belong to a person. Moth is asleep. Moth has always been asleep. You can be too. Continue to listen to music by Velikor Dark Academia.